Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for today's video. As usual, I'm going to be showing y'all everything that I cooked up for dinner for my family over the course of a week. So hopefully at least one of these recipes will catch your eye and you can make something yummy for yourself or your family or just whoever. But here I am making some fried chicken. That's what we call it around here, but it's basically like the same recipe that you would use for chicken fried steak, but just replacing it with a chicken, which we really prefer. If you have been with me for a bit, you have probably heard me talk about my struggles with cube steak and it turning out tough. It drives me insane, but I don't have that problem when using chicken. So what's going on here is I have two boneless, skinless chicken breasts that I've sliced in half. We do prefer it to be on the thinner side, and I soaked that in buttermilk overnight. So fast forward to the next day, and here we are. I just took the chicken and removed it to a separate plate, and to that same buttermilk, I cracked in an egg, and I whisked in several dashes of hot sauce. So now I'm just working on the breading. So I just added some plain all-purpose flour to a casserole dish, and then I added in 2 teaspoons of baking powder and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. Now, those two ingredients, I literally just added that because the recipe said to, but I don't think I would do that again because I don't do that when I make my regular fried chicken recipe, and the coating sticks on absolutely perfect. But with this, when I added that, I noticed that it worked pretty well, but I could tell that the breading was kind of wanting to lift off the chicken, and that just kind of aggravates me. So I feel like that's the reason why. Maybe I'm wrong. But anyways, you're just going to season that flour up to your liking. As you've seen, I did some Lawry seasoned salt, some garlic powder, pepper, and paprika. So I'm taking the chicken, I rolled it around in the flour first, then into the buttermilk and egg mixture, and then back into the flour for a double coating. And I'm just getting that added to some hot oil in my cast iron skillet. I ended up cooking these about 4 minutes per side on medium-high heat. If you notice that some of your breading is starting to get really dark, like on this one, definitely turn your heat down a little bit. But yeah, as you can see, the coating is holding up pretty well, but there's just a few bare spots, which is not a big deal, but I just feel like it could have been avoided. But the chicken is done. I have it on a cookie sheet. That way I can pop it in the oven at 200 degrees just to keep it warm while I make the gravy. So to do that, I left about a 1/4 cup of that cooking oil in my skillet, and then I dumped in about a 1/3 cup of flour. So I'm just getting those two things combined, and then I'm going to pour in some milk. I always use 2%, but feel free to use whatever you want to. You can even use heavy cream. So I'm just going to whisk that really good to avoid lumps, and that's going to thicken really quickly, especially in a cast iron skillet since it holds heat really well. So here I'm trying to thin that out a little bit with some more milk. I would say all in all, I probably ended up using around 2 cups, but you can definitely use more if you want it to be thinner. But lastly, you'll want to season it to your liking. I just went with some Lawry seasoned salt again and some black pepper. So that is done. As you can see, it's super thick, but I didn't want to add any more milk because I didn't want more gravy because I knew that it would have just went to waste. But here is the finished product. This turned out phenomenal. The chicken was cooked to perfection. It was so tender, and the breading and the gravy was seasoned so well, and I just loved how quick this came together. And I just served it with some simple sides. We have some homemade mashed potatoes and some green beans, and this meal was actually our Valentine's Day dinner in. The older I get, the less I want to be around big crowds and long lines, so we all really enjoy this meal. Okay, so the next night I'm trying out a new to us dinner. It was a smoked sausage, pepper, and rice one-pot meal, and it was a huge hit. Definitely a new favorite. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a package of smoked sausage, and I'm just going to get that sliced up into like little bite-sized pieces. I have noticed that like any recipe I make with smoked sausage, my kids will eat it pretty much every time. They absolutely love it. Josh used to hate smoked sausage, but I'm so glad that his taste buds have finally changed. He loves it now. So give us all the smoked sausage. And there is quite a few different flavors out there. I was really wanting to try the Cajun one for this recipe, but I was afraid that it would have been too spicy for my kids, so just went with the original. But the next step will be to heat up about a tablespoon of olive oil. If you like onions, you would want to saute that up first, but I'm going to leave that out, and I'm just going to saute up some peppers. And these are frozen because we had some left over, like mini sweet peppers about a month ago that weren't getting touched, so I just washed them, sliced them, and popped them in a freezer bag, and I thought they turned out really good in this recipe. But I am going to season those with some onion powder. I also threw in some minced garlic. We have some black pepper in there, and instead of salt, I decided to go for the Slap Your Mama Cajun seasoning, and I absolutely love what that did to this dish. We really love that stuff. But I'm just going to saute that around for a couple of minutes, and then that's when I'm going to toss in my sliced sausage. I let that cook for about 5 minutes, I would say, just to get those kind of browned a little bit for maximum flavor. And here I'm just dumping in about 1.5 cups of some long grain white rice. I did wash it first, and if you can't tell, this is uncooked. We'll cook it here in just a minute, but I did toast that up for a few minutes, just like I would with Mexican rice. Here I am dumping in 2 cups of chicken stock and 1 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. So between the chicken stock and the tomato sauce, you can already tell that this is going to be some flavorful rice. And to top it off, I did decide to add in just a little bit more of that Cajun seasoning just to kind of flavor the liquid. So I waited for that to come up to a boil, and I added a lid. I turned it down to about medium-low, and I let that cook for 20 minutes without touching it or lifting the lid. So here's what it looked like after the 20 minutes. As you can see, that rice has absorbed all the liquid. I'm just fluffing everything up. And then I'm going to add my lid on a final time and turn off the heat. And I let it sit for about 10 minutes before I went to serve it. Here is all of our bowls laid out. It turned out absolutely delicious. This is perfect for a weeknight. The only complaint that I could see that some people might have is that the peppers turn out really soft. I mean, I prefer them to be crunchy too, but in this recipe, I did not mind them being soft at all. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, both kids went back for seconds, which rarely happens and always makes me feel so good. There was 0 leftovers, so it was that good. The next night, we tried out another new recipe. This is a pierogi casserole, and oh my gosh, this was so amazing and so very easy to throw together. It's pierogies in this like creamy sauce with ham, bacon, and cheese. Highly recommend this one. So here I'm just taking a 9x13 bacon dish, and I've sprayed it with some nonstick cooking spray. I'm going to dump out this whole bag of these mini cheese pierogies. This is the larger bag. It was a little bit cheaper than doing like 2 smaller bags, even though I think you get a little bit less, but it's okay. This was my first time buying the mini ones, and I think I like them better. I think these are the perfect size. They're still not too small, and I think it would work best in a casserole like this. So now I'm just dumping on some diced ham. This is from a ham steak that I've had in my freezer for a bit, so I was glad to finally get that used up. And then I had the smallest amount of bacon bits left in my fridge. Really needed to use those, so I just dumped them on in, but you could definitely leave that out if you wanted to, or you could even replace the ham with some bacon. Just do whatever you want to. Make it your own. But now I'm going to get started on the soup. Make sure that gets poured over the top. So I have a can of cream of mushroom soup. And that might shock y'all if you've been watching me for a while. I never buy this. We don't eat mushrooms. But I got this for free with the Ibotta app around like Thanksgiving time. So I couldn't pass it up. And I knew that I could use it somehow. So I just like kind of sifted it through this fine mesh strainer to get the mushrooms out. Make fun of me all you want to, but this is just how I am. But moving on to that, I'm going to add in about 3/4 a cup of milk, and I'm just going to get those 2 things whisked together real quick. And then I'm going to season it up with some onion and garlic powder, and that was it. That is going to get poured all over the top of the casserole. If you like onions, again, you could add that like over top of the ham. That's what the recipe said to do. I will say that this was hard to kind of get it distributed evenly over the top, and I was worried about the pierogies not cooking right, but it all works out in the end. It has like a long cooking time, so everything like bubbles up, and it's like the sauce almost doubles somehow, but now onto this cheese. So for Christmas, my parents got me a vacuum sealer, like food saver machine. It's something I've been wanting for a while, and this was the first thing that I used it for. So I had bought 4 blocks of cheese at Kroger because they had a really good sale. So when I got home, I hand shredded each one, individually packaged them, and then vacuum sealed them to try to keep them fresh. And so that way they'd be ready to go when I needed them for recipes. And in the back of my head, I was worried about it clumping back up together, but I like researched it and watched a couple YouTube videos on it, and I saw where people had like success doing it. But the difference is they use like the already shredded kind that, you know, has that coating on it to keep it from sticking together. So yeah, mine clumped back up together. I should have known, but oh well. I was annoyed, but I just crumbled it, made it work, topped it with some pepper, and I baked it at 350 for 1 hour. It definitely does not look the best, but it served its purpose. It's still nice and cheesy, and I'm just gonna try to forget about it. But we topped it with some sour cream and some chives, and I cannot get over how good this was. And the leftovers were just as good. I cannot wait to play around with different versions of this. I feel like there's so many different things you can do. I just served mine with some like chopped up asparagus, and it was just the best meal. Okay, so this was one of those nights where nothing sounded good. I had no clue what to cook because I had nothing planned out. So I decided to just work with what I already had in the kitchen. So I almost always have chicken breast in the freezer. So I thawed some out and I ended up making this garlic butter chicken. I feel like everyone needs like a good go-to delicious chicken recipe that's very simple, and I promise you this is it. So this was 2 chicken breasts that I sliced into thinner pieces, and I am just seasoning that with some of the Trader Joe's 21 seasoning salute, some kosher salt, and black pepper. I'm going to be heating up about 3 heaping tablespoons of olive oil, and once that is nice and hot, I am going to lay my chicken down, season side down. And now is when I'm going to take the opportunity to season the other side the same exact way. And you don't have to use the Trader Joe's 21 seasoning salute seasoning. You can replace that with anything that you want to. But I let that cook for about 5 minutes without touching it. That way it could create like a really nice sear. To me, that looks perfect. And I'm just going to let that cook for about 5 minutes on the other side as well. And then I'm going to remove it to a separate plate. Now I'm just going to deglaze that pan with about a 1/2 cup of chicken stock, or you can use white wine, whichever you prefer. And I'm going to cook that down for like maybe a minute. And then I'm going to add in 3 tablespoons of butter. And once that is melted down and nice and bubbly, I'm going to add in like a big spoonful of minced garlic. And I'm going to saute that around for about a minute, just until it's nice and fragrant. And now I'm going to cut off the heat, and I am going to place my chicken back in the pan just to warm it back up a little bit, and just to infuse it with that garlic butter goodness. So I am really pushing it around and flipping it over just to make sure that everything is flavored well. Lastly, I just hit it with some dried parsley, and that was it. Super, super easy, and I'm telling y'all, this is one of the best and quickest chicken breast recipes I have made. You could use this like over a pasta if you wanted to, maybe in a wrap, over a salad. We just kept it simple, and I served it with some roasted broccoli and some of this roasted garlic and olive oil couscous, which I think is such a great side. It's done in like 5 minutes, and yeah, really easy dinner done in about 15 minutes. You just can't beat it. Now on to the last recipe in this video. I made some spinach and ricotta stuffed manicotti. We love this meal. It has been forever since I have made it, so I was glad to pull this recipe back out. So I'm going to start by dumping out this 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese into my small mixing bowl, and I'm going to use about half of this bag of frozen spinach. In my last dinner video, I was talking about how I didn't need to like squeeze out the excess water in the spinach, but I did have to in this recipe, and the difference between then and now is in the last recipe it was like partially frozen, and in this one it was completely thawed, so I definitely needed to squeeze it out. But moving on, I've added in 1 egg, a big spoonful of minced garlic. I'm seasoning to taste with just some garlic powder, Italian seasoning, salt and pepper, and I did the smallest dash of nutmeg. I'm also adding in about a 1/2 cup of some shredded Parmesan cheese, and I'm going to do about half of that bag of mozzarella, which is around a cup. And of course, I'm going to mix that together really well, making sure to really break up the egg. And it should look something like this. And that is it. I'm just going to set that to the side and move on to the next step. So again, I pulled out that same casserole dish. That's my 9x13. And you're going to want to grab your favorite spaghetti sauce. We really like the Prego Traditional. I had a little bit left in a jar in my fridge, so I of course used that up first before dumping in the new jar. So basically, you just want like a thin layer of sauce on the bottom. I'm using the back of the spoon to kind of help spread that out. And then you'll need a box of manicotti. And I'm telling y'all, I had an absolute time trying to get my hands on that. It was extremely hard. I didn't think I was going to get to make it. But moving on, so I just moved that ricotta mixture to a piping bag. I feel like that's the easiest way to stuff these. And you'll need to kind of just do it on both ends. I found that to be the easiest. And my favorite part about this recipe is the fact that you don't have to boil the noodles beforehand. You just stuff them the way they are. So it makes it a lot easier. So now you're just going to want to completely cover the tops with the rest of that sauce. And I did use a little bit of water to shake out all of the like extra sauce in the jar because I wanted it to stretch as far as it could without having to open up another jar. But it's very important to make sure that the pasta is completely covered because that is going to ensure that your pasta cooks perfectly. So now all that's left to do is to add some cheeses on top. So I'm going to add the rest of that bag of cheese. So you need 2 cups of mozzarella total, including what's inside the filling. And then I'm just going to fill in the gaps with some of that shredded Parmesan cheese. So now I'm just covering that tightly with some tin foil, and that's going to go in the oven at 350 degrees for 1 hour. Then I took off the foil and baked it uncovered for 15 minutes. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. It is so delicious, and I feel like it's a perfect meatless meal option, and it's just something we all love. I served it with some leftover Fazoli breadsticks. My dad brought us lunch from Fazoli's the day before, and I served it with a side salad that has some chopped up turkey pepperonis on top. We've been loving that on salads, and just some shredded cheese, ranch, and croutons. That is going to wrap up this video. I hope that if you like what you've seen, that you'll hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. It is free to do so, and I just wanted to thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next one very soon.